They boo Rangers players. They boo Rangers players. How can you sit next to supporters? How can you sit among supporters, support the same team as them when they are booing Rangers players on the pitch right in front of you? But enough of the last time Rangers played Aberdeen and of the first Old Firm game this season. I would like to talk to you about the Scotland national team. The Scotland national team who on Sunday night with that 3-each draw against Norway at Hampden completed their qualifying campaign for Euro 2024. In terms of qualification, that game against the Norwegians was pretty much a dead rubber. And we're used to that. We're used to Scotland in qualifying playing dead rubbers, but usually because Scotland are out long before it gets to the last round of fixtures. This time it's because Scotland were already through with a month to spare, with 2 games to spare, and that is pretty remarkable considering the way how things have been going generally in the 21st century for Scotland when it comes to qualifying for major tournaments. I would like to talk to you about that, but I can't before I discuss the tension that exists between some Rangers supporters and the Scotland national team, some Rangers supporters and the Scotland national team's support, the old Tartan Army. I've tried this video 3 times. I've tried this video a few times since Sunday night, and I'm cognizant of the fact that I think there's like 54 people have subscribed to this wee channel of mine. I'm really grateful. Thanks very much, folks. I can't believe that. That's 10 times more than I ever thought. And because of the gratitude I have, the respect I have for that, I know most of you will know me through Gersnet, so the vast majority of you will be Rangers supporters, and any group of Rangers supporters these days, proportionately there will be some of you who have no time for Scotland, no time for the Scotland national team, certainly no time for the Tartan Army. And likewise, there'll be a fair proportion of you who are sitting there going, so Alec, I'm a Rangers supporter, I'm a Scotland supporter, I'm Scottish, just carry on. What's the big deal here? Please get straight to your boring anecdotes as quickly as possible. Please don't dilly-dally, don't delay in any way when it comes to giving us your fascinating statistics and stories about the Scotland national team. But I can't just walk past. I've tried it before, and what I would try to do was slip in my position regards being a Rangers supporter and being a Scotland supporter. I would try and slip in a little acknowledgement of the tensions and explain my position with a wee anecdote, a wee aside. I was wanting to come on here and talk about, for example, this is the 12th tournament that Scotland have qualified for, 12th major finals. That's a disgrace, I feel. But they're only a nation of 5 million, well, the SFA would say. You're only a nation of 5 million people. The SFA, worst of all for that, just using that as an excuse. They're doing well just to qualify for a major finals. We've never got out the first round of the finals, but it doesn't matter. It does. I mean, Uruguay have got they're a population of 3 million. They've won 2 World Cups, reached the semi-finals of subsequent World Cups, and up until frighteningly recently, had won more Copa Americas than Brazil and Argentina combined. Croatia, runners up in the 2018 World Cup, finished third at the last World Cup in Qatar. They were third at France 98. They only come into their own as a football nation in the early 90s, 30 years ago. And they've got a population of, I think it's 3.5 million or something. It's certainly a lot less than the population of Scotland. And as far as I can tell, China have never get past the first round of a World Cup. I think they've only qualified for one, and they got their ass kicked in that first round, just like what Scotland always do. So I feel as if for a country like us who, the first international football match ever played, it's a 20-minute walk. It took place a 20-minute walk down the road from where I'm currently sat at the West of Scotland cricket ground. Scotland, second oldest international football nation on the planet when it comes to association football. We played the first ever official association football international match here in Glasgow, 0-0 with England in 1872. Per capita, in terms of supporting the sport of football, the percentage of our population that goes out every weekend and pays to watch football, at times it's been the biggest in the world. At times it's been the biggest percentage in the planet. It's not the size of the man in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the man. I think it's an absolute disgrace that Scotland have only qualified for 12 tournaments now, ever. And so there's a good juxtaposition there with, it's a great achievement considering how poor we've been for the rest of the 21st century, that Scotland haven't had to rely, even as they qualified for Euro 2020, via the playoffs, because they've got a great record in the Nations League. Not even had to rely on the playoffs this time. So that's a great conversation to be had, but I can't do it because I keep trying to start these conversations, and I think I need to say something. I need to say something about, as a Rangers supporter who's supporting Scotland, and I know a lot of Scotland supporters would definitely like to see no Rangers supporters at Scotland games, and I'm not going to let that happen, but I would try to do a wee one-liner, a wee sidebar, and it would go a little something. That quick one-liner would go a little something like this. So Scotland have qualified for Euro 2024, and listen, by the way, I am a Scotland supporter. I see myself as a Scotland supporter. I'm not like a member of the Tartan Army. I've never worn a kilt, and I never will, as far as I'm concerned. And I don't mean that because I hate all signs of all things Scottish. I'm not like one of these ultra unionists who wears kind of Union Jack pajamas and just hates anything that's associated with Scotland. I'm really proud of being Scottish. Just I actually see the kilt, the kind of modern kilt, which I think was invented by a German iron maker, as a tool of oppression. It was that kind of Walter Scott biscuit tinnery. Like he was wanting Queen Victoria to see the Scots the way she wanted to see them when she's doing wee holidays at Balmoral. We're just a harmless wee nation of elves dancing about in our skirts, and I'm not a Highlander either. So that the real kilt is worn by the Highlanders. I'm a lowlander. I might wear tartan trousers, Anderson tartan trousers if I was at a push, but I'm never going to wear the kilt. I see it as a tool of kind of the Victorian, Queen Victoria oppression. Oh, so you don't like the royals? No, I do like I sang God Save the King last year at Ibrox just after the Queen had passed away. I loved the Queen. Queen Elizabeth II, even though it's hard to love somebody you've never actually met, but I really admired her, even though she's a tool of oppression for many people. But I think it's good that you have a symbol, a head of state who's not part of the legislature, really not part of the executive when it comes to government, because they can take on board all the feelings of nationalism, which I think is toxic. I think the nationalism, Scottish nationalism, British nationalism, English nationalism, I think it's a real toxic thing. So you think nationalism didn't help the Czechs out in 1960? No, I think sometimes nationalism is a good vehicle to get rid of anti-democratic governments, but I don't think that there's a few dodgy things, obviously trying out the poll tax and what have you on the Scots. We definitely get a hard time of it, but I think we do better as part of a kind of Labour Britain. I've got more in common with people in Newcastle and Manchester and Liverpool than I have in common with Aberdeen or Edinburgh, anybody. No, but there's a lot of really posh people in Scotland that I've got nothing in common with. So the idea that you're all linked because you were born somewhere, or that's something to be proud of where you're born. So you're not proud to be Scottish. You do hate the kilt because you hate Scotland. No, I don't mean. I don't think I don't love Scotland, but it's not. I don't think it's something to be proud of. It's no. You can't help where you were born. There's lots of aspects of Scottish life that are absolutely terrible. Get the worst kind of drug use and alcohol abuse and cancer rates in the whole of Western Europe. That's something we've got to sort out. Was that not the fault of the SNP? How can you go and support Scotland when that's obviously suits the SNP to be Scotland? Nicola Sturgeon used to congratulate Scotland if they qualified for the Euros and what have you. So I don't think that the SNP is the same, even as Scottish nationalism, never mind Scotland are represented by the SNP. I don't think when we voted no at the India referendum, that was portrayed as losing. I don't think. I think it's a victory because I feel Scotland are better off as part of the United Kingdom. So you are a unionist? No. Well, yes, I'm not a connotation unionist. Denotation, I think Scotland are better in the United Kingdom. So it's the best thing for Scotland because I love Scotland. I want the best for them. I don't think we should treat politics and economics in the way we treat football. So yeah, I definitely think that. And so you hate the Queen and you sang Lizzie's in a Box. No, I didn't sing that. I was at the Scotland game against the Republic of Ireland and the Ukraine. It was a double header in the Nations League last season, both at Hampden. The midweek game was against Ukraine, and I was applauding the Queen, and the SFA made sure it was a minute's applause because they knew what was going to happen, and people were trying to sing it in the streets, but it wasn't really taken off. It's one of those things that just needs two people to sing it, and everybody ignores the fact that thousands of people aren't singing it. It's like booing a minute's silence. It just needs 4 people to boo it, and that ruins the fact that 70,000 people aren't booing it. And during the game, I was applauding, but people were trying to boo to drown out the applause, and that's just the tension that's there. But it's like you sit next to Rangers fans sometimes at Rangers games, and you think, what's he talking about? I don't understand. It's usually me. It's the pain in the arse at Rangers games. So it doesn't mean anything bad, or it does mean something bad when it's something you disagree with, but it doesn't mean you stop supporting that team. You go along there and you stand up for what you believe in. And the thing is, when we played the Republic of Ireland the following Saturday night, straight after that, the Lizzie's in a Box thing was certainly getting sung even louder, being joined joined in by a few Republic of Ireland fans with thick Coatbridge accents. But when the Irish national anthem was played, it got booed to the rafters, and I didn't boo that either, because I don't boo national anthems. I don't boo God Save the King or Queen. So you don't sing Flower of Scotland? No, I don't. I do sing Flower of Scotland, but I thought you said you hated that national anthem. Well, I do hate that as a national anthem. I think it's absolutely awful. It's a dirge. It's really mournful. It's had its time in the 1990s. It did well, but then, since then it's just become really painful, and it plays along with this idea of Scotland as victims, and I don't think that's the case at all. We have a sense of nationhood, no matter whether we're part of the United Kingdom or whether we're a constituent nation. There are two constituent nations in the United Kingdom, and one's us and one's England. So it's to say that we're an inferior part of the United Kingdom is, maybe true at times, but it's difficult. You know what I mean? It just, you end up going on these little rabbit warrens, these little holes, these little side alleys. It's really difficult to explain where you're coming from without it leading into another assumption about you being realised, and you have to qualify that, you have to speak about that. And I liked it when it was just all hypocrisy. The idea that you used to go to Scotland games and there'd be one guy wearing a kilt with sand shoes on, all trainers. They used to get plimsolls that used to get at gym in the 70s when I was a kid, and it just looked daft, and he's having a laugh. But now it's totally literal. It's literal, and I think there's this thing going on with the Scotland support, the Tartan Army thing. It became a cult. It was a laugh up until kind of late 80s, and then in the 90s it really took over. And I think this idea that we're just here for the beer, we don't care about the result, we're trying to get to the point of slagging ourselves before any opposition can slag us because we know we're going to lose. I think that's cowardice. And I think this whole thing of we're just here for the party ends up getting you a team that doesn't even get there for the party. A team that's only interested in the beer, so we don't qualify for anything for 22 years. It's not a direct result of the attitude amongst the Scotland support, but the other thing is, so that's one of those other things you can hear people thinking to themselves or saying to you, all right, so you think it's better that the Scotland support should go and trash Germany, they should get done up high on cocaine next year, and they should go and absolutely trash Berlin city centre because that would make them cooler. Is it cool to sing songs about the UVF and sectarian songs, but it's no cool to sing Do a Dee and all that? What are you need to prove you're hard or something? Like, no, I don't think these things. I just think it went too far. The kind of Do a Deer, we'll be coming down the road. You hear that noise, the Tartan Army boys, it makes my heart sink. I think I have sung it a couple of times at games where the whole of Hampden was singing it, maybe against like Germany or Spain. We need to get behind the team and just make any noise you possibly can. But generally, I cannot be bothered with it. I think it's cringeworthy, because it's part of that whole cultishness, that whole Tartan Army self-styled cuddly toys of international football. My heart sunk the other night where Jan Ager Fjortoft, ex-Norwegian international, a really good pundit on Viaplay, he's talking to Emma Dodge, he's talking to Alan Hutton, and he's talking about how, really sportingly, really generously, he's saying, you'll be so welcome next year. The Germans will love having you. The tournament organisers will absolutely love having the Tartan Army. And I'm like, I'm not going. There's just no way I am going. I love Germany. I love German football. I love German culture. I love German beer. And I can't think it any worse than sitting enjoying that. And then next thing, a guy in a kilt, from like Coatbridge, for Lark Hall, whatever, sits down and starts giving it, oh, a dear. Jesus, mate. Give us a break. Aye. There's a lot of, stockbrokers from Newton Mearns, estate agents from Helensburgh that turn up as part of the Tartan Army, behaving like industrial age working class men. Their idea of what that is, and you really talking about qualification, you don't qualify to use that kind of banter, that kind of pattern, unless you've worked the same jobs and lived the same life as those people. So there's a lot of pretension goes on with the Tartan Army stuff that I just cannot abide. But I'm not going to let it stop me watching Scotland. That's my national team. It's my local team. When I was a kid, it's changed now. It's changed now because what I was going to say, sorry, when I was a kid, it was stratified. It was pretty clearly defined that you had a juniors team, you had a senior team, and you had your national team. Now I get slagged for watching Rangers. I get slagged by certain people from North Ayrshire where I'm born. Kilmarnock supporters. Kilmarnock is my local team. How can you go and watch Rangers? That's not your local team. It's actually just as easy to get to Glasgow, quick to get to Edinburgh as it was to get to Rugby Park from my house. But I certainly watched my local team, my junior team. Now, no such thing as a juniors now for a great part of Scotland. Our Drossen Winton Rovers had a season ticket for them. Absolutely loved them. And Scotland are my local national team, and they're the team that I will support. So I'm not going to give up on Scotland just because a lot of people want me to give up on Scotland. Rangers supporters and supporters of other teams would like us to give up on them. To try, apart from anything else, I just ask people to respect the fact that I support Scotland. Ask Rangers supporters to respect the fact that I support Scotland, and I will respect the fact that they don't. We're not going to slag each other for it. It's a decision to be made, because apart from anything else, the actual expense, Rangers, just watching your own club is expensive enough, never mind adding Scotland games to it. What are we talking about here? Rangers will be playing 19 league games this season at Ibrox. They're just home games. You don't even go to away games. Play 19 league games at Ibrox, unless we start doing really well, start catching Celtic in the league, and then it'll get curtailed. But we've had 2 League Cup games already this season, Livingston and Morton, and Limassol next Thursday with the 5th home game in Europe. So even if we don't get anybody else in Europe or the Scottish Cup at Ibrox this season, that's 26 games. So that's a game for every fortnight of the year. It's massively expensive, especially if you've got kids. If you're trying to go for a few beers and that before the game and after the game with your mates, or if you've got kids. I mean, I love myself a pie and a Coca-Cola, but my God, try to get that in the concessions. It's a lot of money forked out for that, never mind the actual price of admission. Even if you're in my jersey, it's an expensive item just to go and watch all the home games of your club, any club, whoever you support. So adding Scotland games to that, the time and the money. And one of the stories I can tell you, Euro 2000, the qualifiers for Euro 2000, I went to see every Scotland home game in those qualifiers, and the last one was Lithuania at Hampden on a Saturday afternoon. We had to beat them to get into the playoff. Now, Scotland at that point were they'd qualified for Euro 96, they'd qualified for the World Cup in 98, so it wasn't as big a deal then for Scotland to be trying to get into a playoff. But Lithuania, a Saturday, 3 o'clock at Hampden, and it was barely half full. I think it was 23,000 there. It was certainly almost half empty, Hampden, that day. We won 3-0, we get into the playoff, we drew England, and within 10 seconds of the phone lines opening, it was sold out. I didn't get a ticket. And that drove home to me that this kind of anti-English thing, which, don't get me wrong, if some English guy wants to get in my face, the smelly socks, the sweaty socks, we won a World Cup, you've never won anything, blah, blah, blah. The hackles get up and you become pure kind of scorched earth. Let's, Eric Bristol, like Jockey Wilson, get them killed. You certainly, you become total kind of Braveheart in the face of that, but that's an arsehole. That's just an individual being a prick. You don't let that affect your entire attitude towards an entire nation. So I don't buy into that kind of stuff at all. When I go to see Scotland England games, I don't boo God Save the Queen or God Save the King as it is now. I certainly sing Flower of Scotland. It's just, I feel as if that I would be walking down the streets over some various points over the first kind of 20 years of this century, and it would be during a major international tournament. I'd be going home to watch, a World Cup game or something like that, and suddenly a bunch of boys in kilts, Scotland tops, and carrying a big cargo or bevy would appear. I'm thinking, is Scotland rugby team playing tonight? Where are these guys going? But they'd be going home. They'd be going to somebody's flat or whatever to watch the England game so they could cheer on whoever England were playing. I just think that's complete garbage, and that's one of the things that I hate. The fact, which team do you want to beat most as a Scotland supporter? I want to beat whoever the opponent is in the World Cup final, the final of the Euros. I couldn't care. This obsession with England hasn't served us well at all. It's good to have a rival. I love beating England. I love when Scotland play England. The chance of beating them hasn't happened much lately, but don't get me wrong, I've done the 3 trips to Wembley. That's what you did as a kid. I went to see Scotland England at Wembley when I was just 13, just turning 14. My dad took me. And then 88, I went with my mate, we get bevied, and we did the overnight bus for Queen Street down there and back, and that was absolutely brutal. Wild times. And then 2013, I basically took my dad and his mate. It's kind of circle of life stuff, but Scotland lost every game. That's the circle of a loser's life as far as I'm concerned. But I don't go to away games with Scotland. I don't go to any other away games at all. Something I would like to do once. But I'm kind of 88 games I've seen Scotland. 88 times I've been to see Scotland, maybe a couple of times this season. And I don't know if you do the Footballogy app. It's this app that's on You can get it on your phone. It's just aimed at ground hoppers, basically. It lets you take a note, keep a record of how many grounds you've been to, how many teams you've seen, etc. And I'm by no means a professional ground hopper. I've only been about 170 grounds, but it's interesting. It lets you key in, you input all the games you've been to, and it breaks it all down into the various stats. It tells me I've been to 855 Rangers games. Sorry, 885 Rangers games so far, and that's rubbish. That's total mistake. It's much lower than the real number. I'd like to think I've been to closer to 1,000 Rangers games. I haven't. There's so many. I'm so old that a lot of the games I've been to aren't on the database. They aren't on the Footballogy database. Now you key them in yourself. You update the database for them by putting in games, manually inputting games that you've been to that aren't on that database. But some of the games I've been to, there was cash at the gate, or it was on a season ticket. I didn't get another souvenir of it, so I don't have a note of it. And there's certainly a lot of cup games that I haven't put in yet that I went to in the kind of 80s and 90s in particular. But as far as it's concerned, Footballogy says I've been to 885 Rangers games. It also says I've been to 88 Scotland games, and that figure is bang on correct. That is 100% accurate. Because it's really easy to analyse. I've got souvenirs for all the Scotland games I've been to, because you get a ticket, or you'll get a programme at least. And I looked up, I thought, well, 1980, October 1980 was the first Scotland game I went to, 0-0 with Portugal in the Euros. Why is there puddles, Dad? It's not been raining. I just jump over that, son, keep walking. And that's 43 years then I've been supporting Scotland actively. I've been going to football matches, going to Scotland games. For me only to have done 88 games in all that time seems a bit underwhelming. But I looked up, Scotland have only played 826 internationals. This is the men's team I'm talking about, first class internationals and the men's team. I've been to women's international, Scotland women's team. I've seen them a few times. I've seen Scotland underage teams as well, male and female and that kind of thing. So I'm talking about men's games here. Scotland have only played 826 ever since 1872. And I've been to over a tenth of all Scotland games ever played. It's quite amazing. But the thing that really stands out for me is, even at the lowest estimate of Rangers games I've been to 10 times more Rangers games than Scotland games. And that equates with the love that I feel for each setup. Obviously, familiarity breeds contempt, and in Scottish football, contempt is what it's all about, I think. So 10 times more I've been to see Rangers, and that's where the real feeling is, that's where the real commitment is. 10 times greater than what I feel for the Scotland national team, but it's definitely there. I feel really bad when Scotland don't qualify for something. I feel embarrassed. I feel a pain, because they're the representatives of my sport from my country. And there's a whole lot of stuff I want to talk about in terms of Scotland national team, but I feel as if I need to qualify it, no pun intended, with you guys. One other thing I would say, by way of a kind of pithy anecdote, and by now my mouth should be totally out of sync with the sound coming out of it on this here video, so I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry I still haven't resolved that technical problem, but I got a little prop here. I went to Barcelona to see Rangers playing Barcelona in the Champions League 2007-2008 season. We got to the final in Manchester, the UEFA Cup final. But a few years before that, I'd been to Barcelona on holiday for a week with my wife, so we did the tour of the Nou Camp. You've got to do that. Amazing city. You've got to do the tour of the Nou Camp, and they take you into this room in the bowels of the Nou Camp. The Nou Camp, which is currently in pieces, it's been razed to the ground because they're rebuilding it. That's why Barcelona are playing up at the Olympic Stadium in Montjuic these days. So I don't know if this room's still there. I don't know if it changed over the intervening 20 years, but it's a room. All the walls are covered with framed photographs of Barcelona players in Spain jerseys. It's all the players that have played for Barcelona who've been capped for Spain, and they keep it in this room in the bowels of the Nou Camp. You know about Barcelona's history, obviously. They're the ambassadors for Catalonian separatism, Catalonian independence. There's a Catalan national team. It's like a ceremonial team. They'll play every now and then, mostly Barcelona players playing for them. But it says we don't agree with Spain as a nation. We don't want to be part of Spain politically, but we acknowledge it's a proud moment when you're capped for that nation. As a Barcelona, from a footballing point of view, it's an achievement. There's a frisson there. It was quite a haunting, kind of transgressive, almost kind of atmosphere in that room. And I can see the attraction. I suddenly understood what it was like to be a Celtic fan, when it's quite nice to think that the whole country hates you, and it's that kind of, we're the outsiders, you're not just going for a few pints of Guinness and to watch a football, it's a cause you're standing up for. I don't like the idea of Rangers becoming the same thing, and that room, there's a room deep in the bowels of the new camp. Again, I don't know if it's the same room. I've looked at pictures, I've been involved in a couple of projects about the 72 Cup Winners' Cup team, and I've tried to find out, but I've not tried as hard as I possibly could. But I don't think it was the same room because, of course, John Gregg, Rangers' only European trophy lifting captain, the only time Rangers lifted a European trophy, John Gregg was awarded that trophy, or in his own words, he had it thrown at him like he was picking up his gyro by the UEFA delegates after we won the Cup Winners' Cup in the new camp, and our fans were bravely fighting the tools of Spanish fascism, the Guardia Civil up in the pitch, and the UEFA representatives were just saying, right, there's your trophy, get out and take your mad fans with you. This is, I'm paraphrasing John Gregg himself here. And here I have this prop that I've got. If you're just listening to this instead of watching it, it's the programme from the John Gregg testimonial, 1978. And that's a picture in front there of John Gregg with all three major domestic trophies, plus the Glasgow Cup, plus one other. What is that little cup at the front there? It's not the Tennent's Caledonian Cup, it's not the Dryborough Cup, I don't know what it is. Is it the Reserve League trophy? I don't really know. Answers on a postcard, please. But just above that is a picture, an illustration of John Gregg in his Scotland strip. And if you see the socks in the Scotland strip, the socks in the Rangers strip, that'll give you something to think about if you're a Rangers supporter who hates Scotland. But 44 caps for Scotland. The captain of Scotland, John Gregg, was when they beat England at Wembley in '67, when we beat the reigning world champions, the first time they'd lost a game since they won that World Cup the previous year. One of the proudest moments, rightly or wrongly, in Scottish football in history. John Gregg was the captain. And there's the insert from that same programme. I wasn't at the game, it's my auntie and uncle's programme. 65,000 at Ibrox that day, and it was Rangers, captained by John Gregg, against Scotland. He actually played the Scotland national team, or a Scotland representative team anyway, at Ibrox that day. 65,000. I'd been to my first football match at Ibrox the previous year, but this was a day where you couldn't be afforded to be taking the kids because it was standing room only. Absolutely packed. And you want to tell John Gregg that his 44 caps for Scotland was him being, oppressed, or, a tool of the SFA or whatever like that, you go ahead. Walter Smith managing Rangers and sacking Barry Ferguson from Rangers, basically. One of the greatest Rangers players I've ever seen in my life, Barry Ferguson, getting sacked, and quite rightly so, effectively by Walter Smith, a former Scotland national team manager, because he embarrassed Rangers by the way he behaved during the Scotland game, giving the Vickies to the Scotland support. George Young, whatever, David Cooper, the goals he scored for Scotland, just don't ever put us in a situation where there's a wee room in Ibrox. And I get the attraction. At that time I was in the new camp, I could feel it, the kind of transgressive feel, but I don't want it to be a room at Ibrox deep in the bowels. You go on the tour, if you've done the museum, and there's all the Rangers players in Scotland jerseys, no, loud and proud. And for me, it's all about, there's plenty of Scotland games I go to, most of them where the stadium's at least a third empty. There's a whole stand you could just fill with Rangers supporters. I think the Rangers support is still the biggest support probably that goes to Scotland games. It used to be by far, like half the Scotland support was the Rangers support. It's not the case anymore, but definitely there's much more, far more Rangers supporters go to see Scotland than we realise, and I don't think that's something that should ever change, because I'm not going to let the fans of other clubs have my country. Do you know what I mean? But I don't want it to be entirely the Rangers support either. We should be sharing it. That is the thing. And I think there's echo chambers these days have become the thing. Idiots like me with their YouTube channels. Even the mainstream media, it's the Herald obviously that powers Rangers Review, which I listen to every day. I get my Rangers news from the Rangers Review, so I don't have to hear the news of any other club. It used to be you had to pick up a newspaper. I can't remember the last time I bought a weekly newspaper. And we were forced almost, it was there in front of you, opinions, articles on Celtic, on Aberdeen, on Hearts, coming from the same kind of angle, the same point of view as yours. And the fun was always trying to find bias, a bias against your club, pro-Celtic bias, etc. It was the Daily Ranger, the Daily Rebel, whatever we want to call it. But you don't even have to do that now. The only time I see or hear of other clubs is when Rangers play them. And that's dangerous, because you're getting kind of conditioned to think that your world is the only world that counts. And I think that leads to a lot. This is a problem that's repeated throughout the world just now, and it's been pounced on by really bad actors politically and what have you to just polarise everybody as much as possible using social media. And I think you've got to get out there and get in amongst it and learn that other fans exist, fans of other clubs, and without them, Rangers wouldn't have anybody to play. It's supposed to be sport. It's supposed to be fun. There's supposed to be a limit to it, and we should stop taking things so fucking literally. But yeah, the definite what happened in 2012, I get it. I absolutely get it. Rangers going down to the bottom tier of Scottish football, and aided or not prevented from doing so by the Scottish Footballing Authorities, the SFA, who we tacitly support anyway, just by playing, referees, etc., Scottish Cup and that kind of thing. I can see how Rangers fans would want to, some of us would want to, not give any more money to the SFA than we have to by supporting their National 11. So I totally respect that. I would just ask other people to respect that I am a Scotland supporter as well as a Rangers supporter, and I will be back to bore you. That means I can double bore you, both Rangers stats and now Scotland stats as well. You sure you want to subscribe?